Hello and welcome to episode number 325 of the Armin Show podcast, where we have been learning more, connecting, and have had recently panels, which is exciting, and more guests on the way. On this one here, we have an important topic, connecting food and the mind. We have the author of this book right here. What is the book called? You might be wondering. This is Your Brain on Food, an indispensable guide to the surprising foods that fight depression, PTSD, ADHD, anxiety, OCD, and more. Many of the items that are spoken about a lot this year, last year, the recent years. The author of this book, Dr. Naidoo, MD. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Armin. It's lovely to be here.
Glad to have you on. You are described as a triple threat, which is exciting. I need to find myself a description as a triple threat. That's a good one. We always find the threes are the good combo right there. You're a Harvard psychiatrist, director of nutritional and metabolic psychiatry at Massachusetts General Hospital, and a nutrition specialist. Why this combo of three? Did they all fit you very early on? Did you see yourself going in this direction in the first place?
I didn't necessarily see that. And the combination is that I'm a trained professional chef, nutrition, had studied nutrition, and a Harvard psychiatrist. So, it didn't come to me, obviously, but it did stem from my childhood, being surrounded by a lot of family, great healthy meals, spent a lot of time with my grandmother growing up because my mom was in medical school, and just exposure to eating meals as a family, seeing fresh food being prepared, helping her pick vegetables from the garden, for example. But I think that always came with me, but there was always an interest in the science and the scientific information because a lot of my mom's siblings were physicians as well. So there was a lot of talk at the family table around that kind of thing, plus a couple of Ayurvedic practitioners in the family as well. So, Aman, when I started to treat patients and realized the power of the prescription pad, I also wondered, why aren't we asking about what people are eating or whether they're exercising? I knew as I was studying mental health specifically that the medications I was beginning to prescribe had very powerful side effects as much as they were life-saving to many of my patients. So with that, I began to ask more questions. And that's how I started to piece together the fact that nutrition was important, the fact that then interpreting to someone how to make something that's healthy was also important as well. But the culinary part came later on. And it was largely because I didn't cook growing up because I was surrounded by this large family where there were lots of cooks in the kitchen. So that experience came later in my life.
Mm-hmm. The influence around us is a big deal. I've noticed that a few times. One time I talked to a guest and her parents didn't make healthy food. So it was a big deal in her life to counter that. So these things are an influence that passes on to us forever in a way.
Exactly.
Now, food is a big deal. Everybody's eating it all day long. And these issues that are problems are a big deal. They are talked about ridiculously a lot on the internet.
Yeah.
Just a bunch. The categories, including depression, PTSD, the items mentioned on the book. In your practice, first, what are the categories that pop up the most in day-to-day interest? Mm-hmm. Like, this is something I want to deal with.
Probably the commonest things that we see are the depression, anxiety / stress, trauma, and problems with use of drugs and alcohol, getting really stressed, for example, during the pandemic, or really feeling bored and leaning on, one too many glasses of wine at home. But also an uptick of OCD symptoms, so people feeling even more sort of discouraged during the pandemic, but then also seeing an uptick of their particular symptoms. So I'm seeing a lot of this at the moment. And I think that, one of the things that COVID did is it really unpacked or kind of brought the mental health crisis forward, because it was always there, people were suffering, but I think suffering in silence, but COVID really uncapped that in a certain way.
That's true. There's a lot of individuals currently in their own bubble, let's say, and it has become more clear to them these last couple of years versus 5 years ago. It might have seemed like there was a lot of movement going on, so they weren't noticing it, but then there was a pause, and then they're like, wait a minute, this is how I am existing currently.
I think you're absolutely right. The pause definitely created that. So
a moment of self-reflection, we might say.
Absolutely.
Good. Now, one thing I liked about your book is you have foods and nutritional elements in every category for issues. And then at the end, you have recipes and such for different foods that are healthy in the bigger picture. It's nice because it's practical. Somebody could go to certain sections and say, all right, I'd like to take care of this. What are the best options? I haven't seen a book like that before. So if we can look at one, for example, such as depression. Somebody has depression, they have a certain diet, they have certain habits. What are the foods that impact that or that also exacerbate problems that they should be avoiding?
So, the first, I think you are making an excellent point, because the first thing we want to do, Armin, is we want to look at the stuff to clean up in our diet. And by that, I mean, none of us has a perfect diet, including me. But there may be things that we've, say, during this pandemic, have leaned on a bit too much. So the first thing I ask people to do is check out their kitchens. What are they eating? What are they taking for lunch? Are they cooking? And, it comes down to things that you won't be surprised by. But the surprising fact is that a lot of these foods that are unhealthy for our waistlines or for things like type 2 diabetes are also affecting our brain health. And that's not something that people have been really realizing, which is what nutritional psychiatry brings forward. So, for example, take those processed, ultra-processed junk foods and packaged foods. Those are full of colorants, dyes, preservatives, food stabilizers, which make something last on a shelf for so long. Horrible for our brain. Okay. Then you get processed vegetable oils. Now, those are often inexpensive, so fast food restaurants tend to use them a lot. So if you're kind of leaning on that drive-through most of the time during the pandemic, then you're consuming a lot of those oils. They are pro-inflammatory, and what that means is they are causing inflammation in your body and specifically in your gut. Gut inflammation leads to brain inflammation because of the connection. So that's not helping you out. And then there's the added and refined sugars that are everywhere that we don't realize, especially savory foods, pasta sauces, salad dressings, ketchup, things that we don't routinely think have sugar. And those are things that we want to avoid. And it's also the category of trans fats and then artificial sweeteners. Those can be very problematic for mental health and for mood. So it's sort of checking that out and then starting to see what can you cut back on, what can you adjust, and then building in some healthy foods that can help your mood and help everything else.
Mm-hmm. I like that concept. Removal is a bigger deal than finding the perfect items that can be such a solve all, because if you are putting multiple items that cause inflammation, it doesn't really matter if now you have, let's say, a blueberry, because it helps, right, but you have now created a larger.
You're absolutely right. It's like you can't eat your way out of an unhealthy diet. So, if you're eating something primarily unhealthy, you can't take a supplement to get better. You can't just eat a couple of blueberries and think that it offsets. It's a combination of what we're doing on our plate, right? So part of it is also understanding then that it's about that balance. And what I'd like people to understand is that there may be one thing, I listed a list of 5 or 6 things. Might be just one thing that maybe it's the cookies, maybe it's ice cream, maybe it's the potato chips. Just one of those things could make a huge difference, because there's always a ton more food you can add back in to make your food delicious and your meals healthy without even realizing. Because as a chef, I really care that food is tasty. I don't like people to feel they're eating cardboard or they're giving up tons of food, because it makes them feel deprived, and who wants to feel that way? So I think it's really important conceptually to know that there's a ton of stuff you can eat too.
Mm-hmm. I like the concept of picking one thing, because I've mentioned that before, how momentum builds from little items. So if you have some sort of, let's say, fried food, and I read that fried items inflame for like a day, or they stay for like a day, 2 days. So now you cut that out and it's one thing, but now the next day you're like, I might feel a little bit better. Now maybe I'll adjust with some other thing. You can add on items of improvement, versus if you never do that one thing, you'll just have this vague idea in your head that I should do something, but I don't know where I'm going to start. It's good to pick something to target. Now, on the other end, what are some items that could counter depression, or foods that could maybe uplift someone in a way?
Right. So, these are foods which we may be eating, but realizing that they are powerful becomes important. So let's start off with something like leafy greens. You've heard your doctor say, eat some salad, blah, blah, blah. So, we sometimes overlook that, but leafy greens, the greener the better, are very rich in a nutrient called folate, also iron and zinc and a few other things. But folate is significant because low levels of folate are associated with depression. So just making sure that you on your daily basis have a bunch of leafy greens in your salad or as your side dish is really important, because you're then adding that nutrient back to your diet. Then it's things like prebiotic foods. Prebiotic foods actually feed the gut microbes and nurture them. So when they are taken care of, they act in our best defense. And prebiotic foods are things like oats, bananas, asparagus, jicama, garlic leeks, onions, a lot of things that we kind of have around, certainly garlic leeks, onions we have around in our kitchen. So those are great foods to keep on hand. Then fermented foods, a recent study published in Cell in summer this year from a very prestigious group at Stanford University looked at fermented foods. Well, they looked at several different things, but they found that fermented foods actually reduce inflammation. So every culture has a fermented food. There could be kombucha, there could be kefir, it could be miso, kimchi, could be many different things that you just add it to your salad or add it to your Buddha bowl or to your protein bowl or to your evening dinner. Those are super healthy for you. So try to add them in consistently. One tip about fermented foods is if you're buying them, make sure you're getting them from the refrigerated section. And also watch in things like kombucha for the commercial versions, which can have a ton of added sugar. So just watch for that. So those are some things to think about. And then you can also include foods that, include spices. That's something that many people overlook. Spices like turmeric with a pinch of black pepper or saffron have actually shown a significant level of improvement in mood. With saffron, you may want to look at a supplement. It's one of the rare cases where it's suggested in a supplement, because the amount that we cook with is not enough to make that difference, but it's known to be powerful in terms of mood. So those are just a few foods to get you started.
I like that. The addition of colors and spices, vibrance, it connects with like a day that's healthy and has activity, sunlight, movement. All these things together make life more interesting and varied than if we always have something bland repeatedly. That's not whether inspiring or healthy, kind of both at the same time.
Absolutely.
Now, also one thing that comes to mind is you mentioned a few minerals or such. What are some things that people are short in that you have noticed? The average person, what are minerals or compounds that people have a deficit in?
Sure. So, it depends on what the person is eating, and there are many different, factors. Everything is highly personalized. But that being said, there are certain things like living in the far Northeast, as I do, people can be deficient in vitamin D. But, I'm all about test, don't guess. So have your doctor check some blood levels, see if you have a deficiency. So vitamin D might be one. If you say are a vegan and you are not consuming any form of animal products, you might notice certain symptoms. Your doctor might want to check your vitamin B12 level. I think there are a lot of people, and this is easy to replace, maybe a little bit short on magnesium, but not everyone. Again, these are things which can be easily tested with your doctor and easily replaced through food sources or through supplementation. So just some things which are powerful in mental health as well. All of those ingredients are powerful in mental health, and just worth checking.
Mm-hmm. A couple of times, many years ago, I went vegan for a few months, and I didn't do it properly, I guess. And so after a few months, I had like skin peeling off my fingers and stuff. So I was doing it wrong. Obviously, I was missing some things that were necessary, but it was good to notice that obviously some other foods I was eating were taking care of something. So
right.
I could see a counter effect there. It's good to test things at times, but also checking with the doctor. What's an early age actually that people should start checking with the doctor about all their mineral levels?
So, I think that much depends on the person's condition. If they're otherwise healthy, your pediatrician to your doctor who treats older adults, geriatrician, will check the appropriate tests, send you for the right screenings. So I think that unless there are symptoms or someone is noticing something, or a child, say, has difficulties eating or doesn't want to eat certain foods, and the mom is concerned, that may be worth checking. There isn't really an age cutoff. I really look at nutritional psychiatry from a symptom standpoint. So if someone is reporting something that they're eating, so if someone comes in and they have a vegan diet, one of the things I'm getting concerned about is how can we get in those nutrients that they might need? Because vitamin B12 plays an important role in our neurological system, in our brain system, in our brain health. If someone comes in and, they don't like leafy greens, or they don't eat veggies for some reason, they just, dislike them. My role is to try to work with them around how can we create more of that balance in your diet. So that's different from someone coming in quite sick with symptoms of, say, a vitamin deficiency, or something that is very obviously very obvious to their doctor, and I really have to check this because you have these symptoms. Then it's different. We look at it from the clinical standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of specific symptoms, it makes me think of another person. I have a fellow podcaster that I know, and he is, let's say, 9 years sober from alcohol and whatnot. So he had addiction and such. Are there any foods that help in the process of someone like that getting away from their addiction? And are there any foods that can motivate them to forget about or put aside their feelings for needing whatever that is, alcohol, let's say?
Absolutely. So, we haven't looked necessarily at foods that will offset or reduce symptoms of alcohol addiction or substance addiction. But what we do know from the general concepts of good nutrition are a few things. What we don't want to do when someone has been struggling with an alcohol addiction is replace that with, say, cookies or some other addiction that is more food related. So for whatever reason, if the person has sort of developed a tendency to lean on something to feel better, we want to make sure they're engaged in a good therapy program, maybe some group therapy that also helps them understand what's going on with them. Because, actions are one thing, but some level of understanding as humans is important too. So that person may need to understand a little bit better what's driving those cravings for alcohol, what's happening emotionally. Maybe they need some form of therapy as well as maybe some other treatment. But from a food standpoint, eating a nutritious diet becomes really key, because often you've heard the term people drink their calories when they have struggled with alcohol. So sometimes they lose weight, or they may be deficient in certain things, may not be obvious, but they simply would rather reach for a beer or a glass of wine or whatever it is they're consuming rather than eat that nutritious salad. So starting to build back good, healthy building blocks of eating and good nutrition become key. Those salads, those veggies, the clean sources of protein, whether they eat meat, eat seafood, or they're vegetarian, whatever that might be. Those prebiotic foods, the fermented foods, adding in spices, starting with really laying the foundation of now eating and embracing a healthier diet. All of those things are going to help their mood. All of those things are going to lower their stress and anxiety by cleaning up their diet as they're starting to become sober. What they don't want to do is say, hey, I'm giving up alcohol, let me get donuts for breakfast. Because what happens is that they fall into a different trap, which is, kind of getting used to the sugar from those. And we know from research that sugar, and especially those refined sugars, work on the same reward and chemical pathways, the dopamine reward pathways in the brain, as things like cocaine. So we want to be careful that someone with any form of addiction doesn't just switch that to some food issue. That may not help them either.
This is a great point about not taking a point of weakness and then using that, and now you lean on another point of weakness that's maybe less bad, but you're not going in the right direction. You're just slightly adjusting versus I need to tackle this.
You're coming off one substance, but you're replacing it. And that's where therapy, individual therapy, group therapy, working actively on an addiction of whatever kind it is, becomes really helpful, because the person starts to understand what might be going on. Maybe they struggle with a little bit, but it starts to bring that to their cognition, to their thinking center, and helps them start to work out what the issue is.
Taking it out of autopilot.
Yes, that's a good one.
I am stuck in this form, but if I start thinking about it, okay, subconscious to the conscious. Okay, this is what's causing me to do this. No, cookies is not a solution. I need to talk with people about some non-enjoyment maybe I have that leads to that in the first place, and then I tackle the actual issues. Right.
Boredom or depression, or anxiety. People drink for many different reasons. Sometimes there's an underlying condition that they're trying to kind of relieve the symptoms of too.
Right. Also, like going back to that one part, the gut bacteria, I have checked in about that, but it's nice that you're actually feeding them so they can work for you. That's a nice team process there in the gut. They're on your team.
Exactly. They're on your team. They're working for you, but you feed them sugar and stuff like that, then the bad guys take over, and that's never good for us.
Supporting the wrong team. Yeah.
That's right. Supporting the wrong team.
That's a good way to think about it. Now, this is probably, I don't know if this might be one of the biggest issues talked about on the internet in this year is anxiety. People with an anxious nature, or they feel anxious at times, which this is a category I don't know too much about, but I know it's very prevalent. What can be done by those individuals in the food category? Is there like chewing on celery on a regular basis? What can do this?
So, I think that with anxiety, we want to look at from many different approaches. Learning techniques. But let's put the food aside for a second. We're just learning techniques through therapy, through mindfulness techniques, through breathing exercises, yoga, tai chi, dance, exercise, outdoor time, hydration. When someone's dehydrated, they can appear anxious. So if they've not been short on water for some reason, they can actually have an anxiety attack. I've seen it happen. So all of that becomes important. The thing about it, is for people to be learning these techniques when they're feeling or in a phase of less anxiety, right? So that when something kicks in, when they have an onset of panic or they are stressed by something, they can lean on these techniques to start to feel better. It's tough. You should never say to someone who's having an anxiety attack, "Oh, calm down," or "take a deep breath," because guess what? Their system is in such overdrive. It's a horrible thing to hear from someone. So I like to tell the clients I work with, learn these when the days are calmer, when you're having a slightly better time. That's the one component. But in terms of food, again, cleaning up the diet and understanding the things that are not good for you becomes important. Some of the stuff that can worsen anxiety, again, are those added refined sugars, artificial sweeteners. If someone's trying to come off sugar and says, "Oh, I'm struggling with sugar, I want to go to sugar-free items," could be the artificial sweeteners in those replacing that taste can be driving certain symptoms of anxiety. So that becomes important for us to understand. And then adding in the foods that can help, vitamin D rich foods, foods that spices like turmeric with a pinch of black pepper. All of these can become important. Even having a calming tea like a lavender or passion flower tea can be very, very calming to the system. So starting to employ those food and beverage techniques becomes really important, for us to start really leaning into.
I am very much a fan of the idea of taking the good times and using those to prepare for the times are likely to happen later in the week or in the month that are not as great. And when those times show up, yeah.
So I thank you for reiterating that, because I think it's really critical for us to understand. I think sometimes, we look at fixing things when they happen. A symptom happens like anxiety, and then we look to fix it. And the truth is, we understand that from the medical model, but people are maybe suffering prior to that. And what we want to do, especially where food can be powerful, is if we're really adjusting our diet on a daily basis, trying to move towards a healthier diet, healthier options, excluding the kind of not so great foods, we then are working towards on a continuum of improving even symptoms of anxiety. A simple tip is, magnesium-rich foods can really help anxiety. Magnesium-rich foods, because magnesium can sometimes be what's needed in anxiety. So eating foods like avocado, nuts and seeds, certain berries and beans, and dark chocolate, extra dark natural chocolate can be super helpful because these are rich in magnesium. So little things like that, learning those tips, from that chapter in my book, and trying to practicing them, so that on the day that you get up super anxious and feeling overwhelmed, you can lean on certain things that you've learned and start to include more of those foods as well.
I definitely like that category of like walnuts and pecans and dark chocolate and raisins. And these are some of my favorite things. So it's nice that they have some healthy elements to them and for well-being.
I'd say that one thing with dried fruit is just to be careful because the sugar is concentrated. So I don't, cut maybe a couple of raisins, but maybe adding in one of the things I like to pair with dark chocolate is sometimes a piece of fruit, because things like citrus, like a piece of clementine, goes really well with dark chocolate. So making that a little bit of a treat for yourself is a really a better choice. But whatever works that you enjoy.
This is a good combo. I don't think I really have tried that combo much, because it's always like I would put it with like nuts and dried fruit, but that's interesting. I may make use of that one. That's a good one. I really like that concept that was brought up there about like for let's say an anxious person, using the times they're not anxious before they get into a zone where the feeling is too much for them to prepare for that. Same as if someone has 4 good days a week and 3 days where they don't have time during the week, to take those 4 days and plan out, okay, how am I going to get things as much done during that time? Because I know it's going to come.
Including their food prep. That's a big thing that I spend time talking to people about and talk about in chapter 11 of the book, which is about recipes. It's how do you set yourself up for success in the kitchen? Because I know that I came to cooking later in life, and I had to learn all of that on my own. And, of course, I called home a lot and spoke to my mom, but that, it helps us to kind of even out the times when we are busy, or in the case of anxiety, to know the breathing technique, that when you have that anxious feeling, your body starts to naturally go to the things that you've learned. And when people practice it, it can be helpful. I don't think we should ignore these things because, people feel that they're not helpful. I think that's that we're not practicing them.
It is a big deal. It's almost like if at this time, let's say I took a deep breath, huge difference. Yeah. It's almost like there's a space before it and a space after it, and that's separated them.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
That's a pretty good one. The meal prep, I would want to get into that. But prior to that, one other condition that came to mind that I knew somebody, he had this, and it wasn't a big deal, but it definitely was something he had in store, was OCD. He was very, let's say, obsessive about a few activities. Is food related to this in any way, or should they just do that thing they're obsessed with and that's what they're supposed to be doing? How does it work?
So there are foods that can worsen things like OCD, and I've seen a lot of that during the pandemic. So one of the things to do is, again, look at the things that you are the things that you've sort of picked up that are not the best for you. Start to clean up that diet. Some things to think about in OCD, though, are a few other things. You might be leaning on the wrong foods. You might be consuming a lot of fast food that has MSG in it. You might be consuming gluten. Now, gluten is not something I expect people to exclude, but certain individuals with celiac disease or non-celiac gluten sensitivity may actually struggle a little bit with that. They can't consume gluten, but gluten can actually also worsen their symptoms. There are also natural glutamates in certain foods that we might be consuming, like tomato sauce or miso, which is otherwise a healthy food, a fermented food. But if they have natural glutamates in them, they can actually worsen symptoms of OCD. So it's a little bit of a trick situation where you kind of have to work with the individual about what they're eating, and then including things like, milk thistle, certain vitamin Bs become important, turmeric becomes important, and looking at where those added refined sugars are, all those unhealthy foods, and cleaning up the diet that way as well. But there are definitely options for you. There's substances in fresh vegetables that could be super helpful, called minoxidil and things like that. So it's balancing up what your symptoms are and the foods that you need to kind of remove and the ones that you want to add in to feel better.
Makes sense. I like the addition of spices and whatnot. So now, actually, I want to go into that meal prep. Have you done meal prep of some form? Do you do it currently? And how should someone do that? Is it like a 1 day a week, or what would they want to prep?
Prep, sure. So yes, I do that all the time because of the kind of lifestyle I lead. And I've also found it to be effective, and it helps me not fall into those traps when I'm hungry and something is not partially prepared, or that I don't have something in my kitchen. It's like going to the supermarket hungry, right? You start to go through those aisles where you're picking up the stuff that you don't ordinarily eat, or you're just hungry and you want it. Similar thing with meal prep. You want to look at your schedule, and let's take a week at a time. Maybe you're a nurse and you work shifts, so maybe Wednesday is the day that you can meal prep. You may be a mom who's a teacher, or a dad who's a teacher, and maybe Sunday is your best day to meal prep. Whatever it is, you pick a time of the week. And I try to encourage people to do a week at a time if they can, as much as they can. But some people do that twice a week. Set aside a couple of hours. If you have kids, I encourage you to include them in the meal prep so that they're learning healthy food from the ground up. That they're seeing you wash veggies, and they're seeing you, wash berries, or slice up some apples, or whatever it might be. So pick some things that you or your family like, whether you live alone or you have a big family with you. And some of the things that are easy to get done are breakfast. So some of my favorites for breakfast are things like chia pudding. You can make them in small ramekins. You can line up several for the whole week for as many family members. And then each person tops them with some cinnamon or berries or nuts of their choice, or dark chocolate chips. Something that makes it a nice breakfast that you can, if you're traveling to work, you can take a little one with you. It's filling. It's full of protein and fiber. So it's great for you, plus short chain omega-3s, great brain food. So chia pudding is one of my favorites. Another one, if you consume eggs, is mini frittatas. So I like to do these in a cupcake pan, because you get 12 mini frittatas. Then, I freeze the ones I'm not using in little, BPA-free Ziploc bags, or I also like to use sustainable silicone bags that are washable and reusable. And then you just pick a bag out in the morning on your way to work. By the time you get to work, it's either thawed or just 10 seconds in the microwave. You have something that you can bite on. And they're small, so maybe you might need two. Maybe someone else in the family needs one. So that's another good idea. So those are just a couple of things to think about. And then have salads prepped. So don't add your dressing. Have your leafy greens, have your celery chopped, have some carrot sticks, have some hummus in your fridge, because if someone's hungry, the choices are celery sticks with a little bit of hummus. Have a nut and seed butter. That's a healthy dip. With all of these, you don't want to eat a half a cup of hummus. You don't want to eat a half a cup of nut and seed butter. You want to eat like a couple of tablespoons and have lots of veggies to dip, because the veggies are low calorie, but they're rich in fiber and all those nutrients we talked about. By having your vegetables prepped and your leafy greens prepped, you can toss together a salad in a heartbeat. Okay, lots of colors from those plant polyphenols, eat the rainbow. Then have, maybe some sides, some legumes prepared. A lot of supermarkets will actually steam the lentils for you. You can buy them that way. You can make, you can get tofu and grill it if you want. You can do a piece of chicken if that's what you eat. Whatever it is, you can add your protein. You can also go with, a roasted chickpeas on your salad. So that's a good one, because you can put that together for lunch or dinner. And then for dinner, decide for the week, either different meals that you're going to have. Is it going to be roast chicken? Is it going to be cauliflower steaks? Whatever it is, and lots of sides of veggies. And here's a tip that I like to give people: frozen veggies and frozen fruit in the US are really as good as fresh, because they flash frozen at their peak. So if you don't have time to clean the broccoli, steam the broccoli, or steam the cauliflower, buy them frozen. As long as there's no added sauce or syrup or sugar, you can steam them on the stovetop for a couple of minutes, and squeeze of lemon or some spices that you like, or roast them in the oven. And those are great side dishes. So whatever you're making for dinner, make sure you have a ton of side side dishes that are vegetable because of the fiber content and the nutrient content, just as a way to go. So if you have a couple of things lined up, then you sort of know what you're going to be cooking. Another great tip for families or for single people is sheet pan meals. So say you have chicken, or say you like salmon, or say you like tofu, you can actually do your veggies and your protein with your healthy fat, like your avocado oil, all on the same sheet pan, and add spices. That's my favorite, is add spices to make it different. And, you put it in the oven and you have your meal for a couple of days, or for your whole family. That meal saves time, saves cleanup, and it makes it easy. The more ways that we can make it healthy, but also delicious and easy, that's a great combination.
All in one. With the salad, it's a good idea to, if you make dressing, keep it separate, or like in a separate container.
Exactly. That's a good point. What I like to do is just get a glass mason jar, and I make a simple vinaigrette with extra virgin olive oil, a squeeze of lemon. I have different recipes, but they usually literally 2 or 3 ingredients, and then some salt and pepper. And I keep it in the mason jar, shaken. You just need to emulsify it every time you use it, and pour a little bit on your salad. Or if I don't have time for that, I always have fresh lemon. Trust me, if squeeze a fresh lemon or some lemon zest and salt and pepper in the salad, it's more than, it's kind of great. It's delicious and you'll enjoy it. If you're ever stuck, try that. But another great idea is to keep that vinaigrette in your fridge, like you suggested. And like you said, Armin, don't dress it because it's going to get soggy. Only add that when you're ready to eat it.
How long might that vinaigrette last in the refrigerator?
Oh, if it's in a clean jar and you seal the lid, and you're using a clean spoon, or you're not kind of introducing not tasting it and putting the spoon back in, which will introduce the bacteria, with like 7 to 10 days. So if you make a nice big jar, you're going to be good for good, good 7 to 10 days, and keep it refrigerated and just shake it when you need it.
This is a great idea. It's very practical. We're in the very practical domain, which is nice.
Exactly.
One other thing that came to mind is, let's say we took 2 different people. One for 6 months just eats plain rice, plain beans, let's say. And then the other person eats that, but also with spices, colored foods, different kinds of colored peppers, all kinds of items placed on top of it. 6 months down the line, what kind of larger variations might we see between these 2 individuals?
Well, I've got to preface this by saying that a microbiome is like a thumbprint. So, it's going to vary, and more, even in my practice, I've really moved to personalized nutritional psychiatry plans. So we're sort of talking hypothetically here, but I think what you're trying to say is someone is kind of eating a bland diet and eating the same thing. Another person is eating a variety, lots of colors, which gives you the antioxidants, anti-inflammatories from those veggies, and plant polyphenols, and they're adding in spices, all of which have some benefits. The person who's kind of eating a bland meal, I don't think you're making a point about starch. So I don't think it's about the rice or that. It's just bland versus colorful, right, and more variety. Yes. So I think that the person eating that colorful meal with spices is actually, what they're doing is that they are power packing their brain nutrients, right? They're adding in spices, they're adding in veggies. Veggies are anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, rich in plant polyphenols, full of vitamins and minerals, full of things that macro and micronutrients that you want. So they are consuming a healthier diet. They are basically, in that single plate of food, adding as much brain power as they can. The other person is just eating the same thing. Maybe it's, healthy in some way, but they're not taking the power of spices. They're not using healthy fats like extra virgin olive oil, or avocado oil, or avocado itself to help them along. And, I think to some extent, I'd say they're not really getting much joy from their food. So I think that that's a huge part too, because, unless you're just a person who doesn't care what they eat, most people enjoy a meal. It's this time to connect with friends and family, or it's a time to sit down for after a busy day. So it could be all of those factors that become important.
One thing that came to mind there also is when we speak about inflammation in the gut, is inflammation could be thought about like the same thing as if you get like a bug bite on the skin or a rash and you're actually like, it's not good for your skin. Your skin's trying to get rid of it or solve it. Is that the same thing that's happening in the gut, like in micro sense?
So that's a good question. There are different types of inflammation. The type of inflammation that happens with a bug bite, or say you scuff your knee, is an important process in the body for healing. So inflammation is not entirely bad. It has some really good and important functions in the body because, when you get that bug bite, you need your skin to heal. You need the inflammation to go down. What we're talking about with the gut inflammation is a more insidious, more chronic process. So, you consume foods that are unhealthy. There are a lot of toxins that come with that. There are lots of ingredients in that food which are not great. The preservatives, colorants, dyes, food stabilizers, all of those are not good for your gut. And that's what starts to set up for inflammation. I mentioned, feeding the bad bugs, supporting the wrong team, as you said. If you're eating the candy, the sugar, the cookies, the ice cream, all those added and refined sugars are feeding the bad microbes. When they start to take over, they command the field in the gut. And what they do is they set up the gut for inflammation. And the cell lining in the gut is very delicate. It's one single cell layer thin. The bad microbes are fed, and they are powerful. They start to really break through that barrier. And that's when you start all the time to get things like leaky gut, intestinal permeability, and you really get set up for inflammation in the gut. So it's a sort of more insidious, more chronic process. But you can see how it really gets modulated through those gut microbes.
It's nice. So there's a slight difference, but it's like you're building up something that'll attack your lining. Fair. Now, there are a variety of concepts we have covered there. If you had a message to all people about what food could do for them, or how to approach responding to conditions like depression, anxiety, dementia, and whatnot, what would you want to tell all people on the planet?
Food is a very powerful tool for your brain and for your body. The missing gap has been, we look at type 2 diabetes or waistline and weight gain, and we forget about our brain. The power's at the end of your fork. So if you're not feeling good, if you're feeling anxious, if you've struggled during this pandemic, while getting to see your doctor and booking that appointment, also realize that you can make a very powerful change that you can control by how you're eating. Just start cleaning up one thing that you've picked up during the pandemic, and start to include more of those good, fresh choices to feel better. So power is at the end of your fork. And that's the take-home message.
Power is in our hands when it comes to nutrition and whatnot.
Nutritional psychiatry.
This is cool. Dr. Uma Naidoo, I would like to thank you for having joined on this episode of the show, informing us about how food is connected to the mind and giving us practical information that I definitely can use and the listeners can use as well.
Thanks so much, Aman. It was great to talk to you.
Glad to have you on. And we are out.